Hey, everyone, and welcome to the Cross the Crown podcast. This is episode 21, Stewards of Time. It sounds like an ominous sci-fi movie now that I think about that.
We had some music going in here. Yeah.
I'm Chris Bales, and this is Doug Gooden.
Hey, everybody.
For those of you listening, he waved. We're going to be talking about stewardship for the next few weeks, but specifically, we're going to be talking about time today. Doug, how you doing, by the way?
Doing well. Came out of the Christmas, New Year's holiday season. I'm actually pretty rested. I tend to take some downtime. We close the church office, and I usually have one of our students preach. In fact, the guy who preached this time said, this is the third year in a row that he's preached for me on the Sunday in between Christmas and New Year's. And he said, I don't think Doug likes to work during that week. And, well, guilty as charged. So get some good family time and good rest.
The Christmas fill-in.
Exactly.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. What's the weather like there?
It's a little warmer today. It's almost 50, but we've had, a week or so of in the teens mostly, and had a little snow a couple days.
All right. Well, you just deflated me.
Yeah.
I was all proud of our Southern California weather. We actually got down to the low 30s the last several nights. I was like, woo, yeah, we turned the heater on even.
I was talking to a friend in Tucson last night, and he said it snowed, and I said, can you count the flakes? And he said, yeah, pretty much.
Do they stick on the ground? Or they? How many are on the cactuses out there?
His daughter made a snow angel, which was really more of a grass angel, apparently.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we it's all relative to where we're at, and you take the blessings as they come and pretend that it's more than what it is.
I could see you wearing, is that a fleece or a wool jacket there you got on or something?
Yeah, just a little jacket thingy.
How cold is it right now?
It's probably right now in the 50s. It's probably back up to the 50s by now. And I'm inside. I was outside earlier. Came in just wearing it. Yeah. I'm pretending.
Turn on the air conditioner, make it cold.
That's right. I'm sitting on a pile of ice cubes right now.
Good.
Help create the illusion. Well, yeah, Christmas. It's funny because it seems like there's a couple recovery days. As you get older, there's recovery days after Christmas, and we've done that, and it's been fun cleaning up the house. Do you have all the Christmas stuff put away yet?
No, my family begged to not do it until tomorrow, so I relented. Normally, I'm by January 1. Let's get it out of there.
Yep, that's what we try to do. Is at least because of schedule, at least get the inside done before January 1st or on January 1st, whatever it might be, and then I climb out there on the ladder and pull everything down. But with the bad winds we've had recently, I said, no, there's no way I'm going up on that ladder. It's a peak, so I've got to take the ladder and flatten it out and extend it all the way. So it's one of those ones where I'm up on there and it's bowing back and forth as I'm on it as it is. So I said, there's no way I'm going up there in the wind. All right, so let's get into our topic today. Like I said, this episode we want to begin our series on Christian stewardship. And it's a good topic to hit at the beginning of a year as people are making resolutions, making decisions, trying to say, okay, new beginnings here and stuff like that. So we're going to try to help you out with the next few weeks. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be covering topics like time today. Then we're going to talk about money. And then we're going to talk about the body as far as your health, your fitness, habits, etc. And we're going to do this all in regards to stewardship of them. Today's topic, like I said, was going to be about time. But before we dig into that, we want to cover the topic of stewardship just a bit, because a lot of people don't have a great idea or grasp of what stewardship actually even is. And it's funny that it's a word that's some people don't really don't use a lot this day and age. It seems to have lost its popularity, like a lot of other words that have great meaning. Well, stewardship is a steward is someone who is not the owner of something, but the manager of it. He is a servant who is entrusted with the responsibility of looking after the possession of his master. And the Bible tells us in Psalm 24:1 that the earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants, belong to the Lord. Stewardship is something God has always charged his people with, even back as far as the time of Adam, when in Genesis 2:15 we read that the Lord took the man and placed him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to watch over it. It's because of man's sinful rebelliousness against the master that we have made a mess out of the creation that we were given stewardship of, and even our lives. But as those who are redeemed in Christ, we Christians understand that it is our duty and privilege to bring all things under the headship of our Lord Jesus Christ, because, quote, everything was created by him in heaven and on earth, the visible and the invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and by him all things hold together. And that's Colossians 1:16 through 17. So as we begin this discussion about stewardship, let's just talk about one of the biblical passages that's often gone to for a discussion of stewardship. And I remember hearing you one time talking about time management, and you actually went to this passage and briefly went over it. So I want to see if we can go through that today a little bit. Matthew 25:14, the quote unquote parable of the talents. I always laugh at some of the names that the parables have been given, because I think some of them have been very mislabeled. But the parable of the talents, and it's lengthy. Can you summarize it for us?
Sure. Before we do, I think it's worth just reiterating what you just said in terms of we don't have stewards today in the same way that they would have in antiquity, where you actually had someone living in your home or over your estate that you as the owner would entrust them to run it, to take responsibility for it, so that you could go on trips, so you could go do your thing outside of that and know that the home was well maintained. We just don't have that. I'd love to have a steward. I'd love to have you think of a butler, maybe, think of Alfred and Batman, right, or something similar, where Bruce Wayne could go do his thing and save the world. Side note, saw Justice League finally the other day. What a horrible movie. My 14-year-old son said, "Yeah, this is just awful." I think, yeah, I know. We weren't good stewards of our time. I'm sure we're going to give an account for that. So this idea of handing over almost all of the privileges of ownership, at least the responsibilities of ownership, without actually transferring ownership to someone. Where it's different from an employee, where you've designated certain tasks that employee has to do, and you're going to pay them for it and that kind of thing. The steward actually lived in the home, lived in the estate, and served as the stand-in for the owner when he wasn't there, and made sure that everything was taken care of. So the parable of the talents, Jesus is describing a guy who goes off on a journey, and he gives entrusts to these three men the stewardship responsibilities of this money that he's entrusted. That talents are a form of money. And he says here, I've given you some, and I want you to make a profit for me with this that I've entrusted to you. So they're now stewards of this money, and he's gone on a journey, and he expects when he comes back that they have made an increase, a profit with the money that he's left them. And so he comes back and calls them to account and says, okay, I gave you this much. What did you do with it? And several of them come back and say, we've doubled your money. We've invested your money well, and here it is back to you, the full profit. And this is the passage where Jesus says, well done, good and faithful servant. That phrase that we all want to hear and hope to hear from him someday. It's in the context of using what he's entrusted and making a profit for him. Of course, the one steward who was afraid and buried it and didn't do anything with it comes and said, here's the one talent you gave me, and here I'm giving it back to you. And the master is not pleased. Said, at the very least, you should have put it in the bank where it would make a little bit of interest. But even better, do something to return my investment with. And he didn't. And that steward is thrown out and punished. So that's the one we don't want to be.
Yeah, I always thought it was interesting in verse 25 in the bad steward's confession that the talent was the master's. Right. It's yours. It was understood by him and all the others that the talents being given to them weren't given to them as their possession, but it was the possession of the master in which they were in charge and trusted to do something with, to bring a return back for. And so he took something that wasn't his and he used it for the wrong purpose, or just didn't use it as he was supposed to. And so I thought it was interesting that he was fully aware that it belonged to the master, and still this was the result, his sin. So yeah, and so that plays into what we're talking about here. We have, as Christians, we're going to be talking about these topics of stewardship, and the Bible clearly tells us that these things all belong to God, and specifically time, as we're going to talk about today. And we need to be intentional about what we do with our time. We're going to talk about more specifically, but just the same way as these other stewards, these good stewards, were intentional about reaping fruit, reaping benefit, increase from the talents that they were in charge of. We need to be doing that with our time as well, and all these other topics that we're going to talk about. So, as we look in the scriptures, do we see any role models for good stewardship?
Yes. The answer is yes. Obviously, Jesus is the best example. We do not see him wasting time on anything frivolous or tangential to his mission. He repeatedly says, my meat and my drink is to do what the Father gives me to do. I do nothing except what I see the Father doing or what he tells me to do. Certainly, I would say Paul, even before his conversion, he was a disciplined, eager, enthusiastic man who was pursuing the mission he thought God had given him, and he was zealous. He was vigorous. We don't see. He doesn't strike me as a guy who ever sat around binge watching Netflix, before or after his conversion.
Right.
And then Joseph, obviously, you think of when he was finally put into his position, accomplished great things. You don't do that if you're wasting a lot of time. I don't know. Is there somebody in particular you had in mind?
No, those were the two I was mainly thinking about. I mean, Joseph is a hallmark of stewardship. In fact, he was the reason he was elevated to the places and was able to be a blessing to so many was because of his ability and in being a good steward. And Jesus, when I was younger and reading through the Gospels, even as a young teenager, reading through the Gospels, I always got the sense that Jesus was on a schedule, because there's these words like immediately or my time, the time, and he definitely has an agenda. It's like he's got, okay, today we do this, today we go here. It's not the time for this, it's the time for this. And you see him busy about his Father's business all the time. Even from his childhood, about his Father's business. So it's neat to see that in there that he didn't waste time. Now understand, folks, when we say we're going to talk about time in a minute, but when we say didn't waste time, it doesn't mean we don't enjoy time. Right. I'm sure Jesus very much enjoyed doing the Father's will. Right. It kept him busy, and that's what we are to. You get a joy out of being busy and doing the things for the Lord. So. Those are some of the biblical examples that I was thinking of myself.
There's one other that comes to mind, Solomon. Again, we wouldn't say he used his time always pleasing to the Lord, but what that man got done in one lifetime, he's in the upper echelon of productive people in the history of the world. The kingdom that he built, the things that he wrote, and the Proverbs are just chock full of time principles and good stewardship principles. And when you read Ecclesiastes, at least I'm persuaded that he wrote it. I know there's continued debate about that, but I'm persuaded he wrote it. If that's true, what he got done with his life here on earth is tremendous. Yeah. And, he asked, we know the story when God says, ask one thing, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. And what he asked for was wisdom. And wisdom in that context is really more life skill wisdom. Mm-hmm. It's not what we think of as really knowing the deeper discernment of things. That's not really what it was. It was life skill, using your life well. That's what he asked for. That's what God gave him, and he did. So from that perspective, he's a model for all of us, even though there's plenty of things we shouldn't imitate from him.
Yeah. I'm always amazed when you start reading as he took over the throne, all the things that he just right away started getting involved in. Taking care of business, lots of it. Right. Including taking care of competitors. Yes. So we are going to be talking about time and money and